Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a super simple but really powerful tool in Swift, the final keyword. Seriously, it's just one little word, but it can have this huge impact, making your code safer, a lot clearer, and believe it or not, even faster. So let's jump right in. Okay, so picture this. You've been working for hours, maybe even days, just crafting this perfect class. It does exactly what it's supposed to do flawlessly. But you're working on a team, right? So how do you stop someone from coming along, creating a subclass, and accidentally breaking the whole thing with some weird, unexpected behavior? It's a classic problem, and thankfully, Swift has a really elegant answer. And to really get a handle on that solution, we first have to talk about the problem itself. People sometimes call it the inheritance dilemma. Look, inheritance is one of the pillars of object-oriented programming, no doubt. But as you're about to see, it can be a real double-edged sword. I mean, on the one hand, inheritance is amazing, right? It lets us build new classes on top of old ones, which is just fantastic for reusing code. But here's the flip side. If a class wasn't really designed to be subclassed in the first place, letting people do it anyway can lead to some seriously fragile code. It becomes a nightmare to maintain, and it's just full of these weird, unpredictable side effects. So, how do we get all the good stuff without any of the bad? And that brings us to the hero of our story today, the final keyword. It is Swift's built-in, super clear way of putting a sign on your code that says, hey, this is done, it's complete, no more changes needed here. So what is it exactly? Well, at its heart, final is just a declaration. It's a message. When you slap it on a class, you're telling the Swift compiler, nope, you can't use this as a base for another class. And by extension, it also means its methods can't be messed with or changed by a subclass. It's you, the developer, making a really clear statement about what you intend for this piece of code. And you know what? Using it could not be easier. You literally just stick the word final right before the class keyword. Boom, that's it. That one little word now protects our animal class. It's a signal to every other developer on the team that this thing is a finished product. It's meant to be used exactly as it is. And the best part? You get immediate feedback, like right away. If you even try to create a dog class that inherits from our final animal class, bam, the compiler just stops you dead in your tracks with a really clear error. This isn't some nasty surprise that pops up when you run the app. It's a guarantee you get at compile time. It makes sure your design choices are actually being respected. Okay, so we've seen what final does. But the bigger question is, why does it matter so much? Why is it so important? This isn't just about being controlling with your code. It's about writing better, more professional code. And trust me, there are some pretty serious benefits when you use it strategically. Let's just break it down into three main benefits. First, as we already saw, it flat out prevents inheritance. Second, it stops methods from being overridden. And third, and this one's a really big deal, it can actually make your app perform better. So yeah, let's take a closer look at each of those. The easiest way to think about final is just like a big do not modify sign you hang on your class. It's really just a way of communicating with other developers. You're telling them, hey, this class is a complete idea. It's not a template for you to change. Its behavior is locked in, and that makes it super reliable. And that final status? It applies to every single method inside the class, automatically. You don't have to go through and mark each one individually. And what this does is give you a rock-solid guarantee that when you call a method on an object of this class, you know exactly what code is going to run, every single time. No surprises. All right, let's get into that performance boost because this is pretty cool. So by default, Swift uses something called dynamic dispatch for methods in a class. Basically, that means when you call a method, the program has to stop and do a quick table lookup while it's running to figure out which version of the method it should actually execute. It's flexible, which is great, but that lookup takes a tiny bit of time. It adds a little overhead. But when the compiler sees a final class, it has a eureka moment. It knows for a fact that those methods can't be overwritten, so it can switch to something called static dispatch. This means it figures out the exact function to call when you compile the code, way before it ever runs. No lookup needed, it's just faster, and it opens the door for the compiler to do all sorts of other cool optimizations. Okay, so with all those benefits in mind, the big question is, when should you actually reach for the final keyword? Now, the goal isn't to make every single class final, it's about being thoughtful and intentional. So let's put together a quick practical checklist. So you want to use final with purpose. Think about classes that need to have absolutely predictable behavior. Those simple utility or helper classes that just do one thing and do it well. Perfect candidates. It's also fantastic for your model classes, where the logic really shouldn't change. Actually, here's a great rule of thumb to follow. If you're writing a class and you can't think of a good reason for it to be subclassed, just make it final. Start there. And of course, if you're ever in a spot where you need to squeeze out every last drop of performance, marking a class as final can give you that extra edge. So when it comes down to it, I really want you to kind of reframe how you think about this keyword. It's not a limitation, it's a feature. It's a tool that helps you communicate what you mean, that makes your code safer, and that helps you build these really robust, easy-to-maintain systems. Honestly, using final is a sign of a really thoughtful developer, someone who's thinking about not just today, but how their code will be used and maintained long into the future. So I'm going to leave you with a question to ask yourself the next time you're about to write a new class in Swift. Just stop and think. Is this class really designed for inheritance? Or would it be better off with the safety, the clarity, and the performance that comes from being final? The answer to that question might just make your code a whole lot better. Thanks for joining me for this one.